Today is Shavuos 2017, and here in Brooklyn, it's as quiet as a tomb. You would think that this is just a day for eating dairy and doing various religious rituals, but if you look at the Shavuos that I'm thinking about some 2,000 years ago, almost, it's a different story. And tonight I want to speak on the subject, do all speak in tongues? And I'm looking particularly at verse 30 of 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Do all speak with tongues? Do all interpret? The beginning of the verse is, do all possess gifts of healing? Now, there are many congregations, even congregations established by charismatic ministers, who have backed away from the classical Pentecostal doctrine because of this verse. It's sort of, you can take it or leave it type of theology. And if you take it, fine. If you don't take it, fine. And this is the verse that everyone uses. But you see, you have to be careful that you don't get out of the context here, because the context is Paul is talking about the ecclesia. He's talking about the assembly. And he's talking about whether you're silent in the assembly or whether you speak in the assembly. Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 28. Now, uninterpreted glossolalia is not edifying publicly. It is edifying privately, but not publicly, because it's uninterpreted glossolalia. And the problem was, in the Corinthian congregation, everybody was speaking, and they were all speaking in glossolalia. Everybody. And so he has to correct this, because if somebody comes in and they see that, they're going to think that it's bedlam, and since all this chaos is going on, there won't be anybody taught or edified. And then if someone comes in with a secret sin, the secrets of his heart won't be laid bare, because the prophet whom God is informing about this hypocrite isn't able to get a word in edgewise because of all the chaos. And so he has to go back and deal with the functionality of what is going on in the public assembly. And the way he does that is he starts out with what looks like a hierarchy. 1 Corinthians chapter 12. First, there's the Shalichim. Then there's the Nevi'im. That's second in rank. And then third, there's the Morim, or the teachers. Now, why does he rank them like that? Well, obviously, you have to have someone arrive in the foreign field and actually establish the congregation, which may involve even crossing a cultural barrier, a language barrier, or even a religious barrier. So the shaliach has to be there. And then there has to be prophetic preaching and prophecy. And then the doctrine has to be guarded. So there has to be teachers. Now here we're talking about the people who should be speaking in the public assembly. The shaliach, yes. The Navi, the Navi, yes. The Moreh, yes, of course, yes. And also, you have other functions besides those three. You have the one that works the miracles, or the one who does the healings, or the one who's the administrator, or the one who speaks publicly in a tongue, or the one who interprets publicly in a tongue. So he's starting to lay out who should be speaking and who should not be speaking. Now, in James chapter 3, verse 1, it seems as though everybody wanted to be a teacher. And they all wanted to teach. And they all wanted to be public speakers who are teachers, and Yaakov or James has to do the same thing that Rav Shaul is doing right here. He has to put the kibosh on that. He has to say, wait a minute, not all of you should be teachers, friends. The teacher will be more strictly judged, and some of your doctrine is not that good. And you know, I would say sit down. Sit down. All these guys that want to stand up and be rabbis, some of you, many of you, maybe most of you should sit down. So Rav Shaul is doing the same thing here. Now, I'm looking here at 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 30. Do all speak with tongues? Now, he says, I wish that you all would speak. I desire that you would all speak with tongues. So obviously, he would be contradicting himself if he were trying to say, well, that is absolutely impossible. And, you know, in the same way that all can't walk on the water, well, all can't, you know, speak in glossolalia. If he were saying that, then it would be almost ridiculous for him to desire for them to do something that was impossible. You know, to desire them to walk on water would be quite impossible. So at least Kefa was able to do it, but only for a brief time. This is not something that you would expect everyone to be able to do. But when you get to chapter 14, he explains the charismatic nature of the Kehillah, that when they come together, it's charismatic. One brings a tongue. One brings an interpretation. One brings a prophecy or whatever. I mean, this is the kind of congregation that we have, a charismatic congregation. Now, friend, if you have an anti-charismatic bias and you want an anti-charismatic congregation, then don't tell people that you really are advocating the first century church and that you're wanting to be like the apostolic church, because as you see very clearly here in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 26 and following, it was charismatic, and he's not forbidding speaking with tongues. Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 39. He actually says, do not forbid speaking in tongues. Well, someone might say, well, Paul, isn't that what you've been doing here? No, he's not forbidding speaking with tongues. He's limiting tongues, and he's admonishing them that the tongues should be interpreted so that there will be public edification. Amen. Now, at Glad Tidings Tabernacle, there were people who were gifted to do certain things. Some were gifted in music, some were gifted in teaching, some were gifted in preaching, some were gifted in giving a public tongue or a public interpretation. Now, unfortunately, in many of our charismatic congregations, which are charismatic only in name, this is not so much seen anymore. But that's not right, because that's not scriptural. The reason I went to Glad Tidings Tabernacle was because I wanted to have an encounter with God. I wanted prophets to check me out, and if there was something in my heart that was not right, to admonish me and to look into my heart as only about do all speak in tongues. This is a verse in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 30. And just like the kid that says, oh, I thought the teacher said there was no homework, and he's so relieved that he doesn't have homework, and he's really sure that that's what the teacher said, and he keeps convincing himself that there's no homework. A lot of people went off the hook, and they used this verse to say, oh, we don't have to speak in glossolalia. Even though in the book of Acts, everyone is regularized by showing up. Oh, whatever mikveh you had, I'm sorry, that was Yohanan, the Hamabil. Yeshua promised that he would have a mikveh in the Ruach HaKodesh, and they would lay hands on them, and there would be glossolalia. And this was the way they regularized the believers. And when they heard that there were believers here or there, the Shulahim would come up from Jerusalem, or I should say come down from Jerusalem, and they would regularize them. And that theme goes throughout the entire book of Acts. So here you see in Corinth, there seems to be an abuse of this gift. Because you see, Rav Shaul is finding that he has the same situation as Yaakov. Everybody wanted to be a teacher. Everybody wanted to stand up and start teaching and speaking as a teacher in the public assembly. And Yaakov, or James, said, not many of you should be teachers. Let's limit that. Let's limit that, because the teacher will be more strictly judged. Some of you don't have good doctrine. Some of you are not really, you haven't really studied to show yourself approved. You're not really ready to be a teacher. But you want to be called rabbi or whatever. You have your own reasons for wanting this. That's why everybody seems to want it. If you're Jewish, you want to be a rabbi. Well, no, not many of you should be teachers. Well, Rav Shaul says, not many of you should be speaking in glossolalia in the public assembly, because uninterpreted glossolalia is not edifying publicly. It's edifying privately, but not publicly. And what he's doing here is he's making a contrast between speech to oneself or to God on the one hand, or being silent and not speaking in the public assembly. Look at 1 Corinthians 14, verse 28. This is the point he's making, that when we come together, there are going to be speakers. Yes, and they're going to have different functions. Some will be doing a healing line. Some will be teaching. Some, well, look, let's rank them. The first person that has to show up in the community is the shaliach. He is the one that crosses the cultural barrier, the religious barrier, the language barrier, and actually establishes the congregation. Then the prophets show up and they start edifying and preaching and building it up. And then the teachers show up to keep the doctrine correct and to teach right doctrine to the believers. But there are other people who are involved. So when you get to 1 Corinthians chapter 12, you see there are administrators. There are people who have to, do the administration. Maybe they've got to make announcements. Maybe they have to take the offering and count it. Maybe they've got to administer the finances or whatever. But among these people who are speakers in the public assembly, there are those who have the gift of glossolalia, which, when it is interpreted, is almost like prophecy, because it does edify. And Rav Shaul does not want to quench the spirit, and he says very clearly, he says, do not forbid speaking in tongues at the end of chapter 14. So he's not forbidding anyone from speaking in tongues. And in fact, he says at one point in chapter 14, I desire all of you to speak in tongues. So he's obviously not saying that some are congenitally incapable, or for them it's an impossible gift. No, he's not saying that. He's saying that when they come together, there has to be edification. And the people have different functions. And not everybody functions as a shaliach. Not everybody showed up and started the congregation. Not everybody stands up and gives a message in glossolalia, which someone else stands up and interprets. Not everybody is supposed to stand up and teach. This is what Yaakov says. So what we're talking about here is keeping the congregation from descending into chaos, where everyone is speaking in glossolalia. Nobody understands anything. Nobody's edified by anything. Somebody comes in, they have secret sin. A prophet needs to address this. A prophet is aware of a certain hypocrite who needs an admonition because of a secret sin in his heart. But even that can't take place because the whole place is a cacophony of glossolalia with everybody operating in this gift. And Rav Shaul says, no, we don't do that. We see that there are different functions. Not that there are some people who could never speak in tongues. No, friend. Whoever speaks in tongues edifies himself. Why would you want to tell somebody, oh, I'm sorry, sir, you'll never be able to edify yourself in this way. You're just one of those poor losers that doesn't have the gift. No, that's not true. Everyone was regularized with this gift by the shalichim. When they laid hands, this happened. You read the book of Acts and you see it. The glossolalia is assigned to the unbelievers. Now, look, we are in a very hard field here where we're trying to deal with people who nobody is coming to the Lord. And if they do come to the Lord, they're going to lose everything. They're going to be pariahs. They're going to be divorced. They're going to be thrown out. They're going to be shunned. And it's a hard field. So, are you telling me that I should not speak in glossolalia since it is a sign to these unbelievers? And are you telling me that when I get depressed or discouraged in this hard field, that I should not use this edifying gift to edify myself and build myself up as I speak in glossolalia to myself and to the Lord? Is that how you're trying to interpret this? Well, I think it's a false interpretation. So today, friend, I'm addressing the question of, do all speak in tongues? And the answer is Rav Shaul desired that. Yes, he desired it. But in the public assembly, there are times when people should be quiet. And in the public assembly, not everybody is publicly able to publicly function in one of these functions that he's enumerating here: teaching, shaliach, prophet, preacher, administrator, in the area of miracles, in the area of healing. Not everyone has these gifts. That is for public ministry in the Kehillah. However, he's not speaking here about private ministry to oneself. And he's not speaking here about whether or not you must be silent when you are speaking to yourself or to God. No. And therefore, he's not saying here that do all speak in tongues? Absolutely not. He's not saying that. He's not trying to tell people that it's impossible, that they can feel real good about their public worship and their congregation if it's not a charismatic congregation or charismatic worship or charismatic public assembly. Because you see here very clearly in chapter 14 that when they came together to have a charismatic service, period. And each one would bring a tongue or an interpretation or whatever. But Paul wanted everything to be done for edification and everything to be done decently and in order. And he's trying to quell a congregation that has gotten completely out of control in this area. And that is, of course, necessary. But we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, friend. The reason you're backslidden is because you're not edifying yourself as you should as a believer. The reason your services are so dead and dry and people are not coming is because they're not encountering God. They're not encountering a living God who speaks through the prophet, through the tongue, through the interpretation, through the preaching, through the environment of the Holy Spirit who is in the Kehillah. So today is Shavuos. Today is Shavuos 2017. We're in Brooklyn. The place is as dead as a tomb. People are walking around like ghosts, like dead people, like the Walking Dead. They're thinking about, well, should we have some dairy tonight? It's whatever. And they're doing the little rituals. But what I want on Shavuos is an encounter with the Ruach HaKodesh. I want to be edified. I want to be built up. And I'll tell you right now, friend, I could never have done any of the ministry I've done if I had been an anti-charismatic. I could never have done it. I would have been picked off a long time ago. I would have burned out a long time ago. Go to Google and type Tefillah, T-E-F-I-L-A-H. And then type Phil Goble, G-O-B-L-E. Tefillah Phil Goble. And you will see a prayer against the devil. And at the very end of the prayer, it says, I will have a tzom, a fast, and I will pray in Lishonot Hadashot, and I will take the Getoivot in der mikvah, and I will resist the devil, and he will find out that he cannot corrupt me. And all of this spiritual warfare is necessary. And none of these translations that have been done and none of the other things that have been done would have been accomplished without the power of God, which is through all of these gifts. And I thank God for Shavuos today. I thank God for Shavuos 2017. And I pray that you will seek the mighty empowerment that I'm talking about. And that your congregation will be a charismatic congregation without the excesses, without the abuses. Yes, but like I say, seek the Lord while he can be found. Amen.